Hi, this is John Ondo from Marketing Media and Cupcakes. And before we get into today's episode, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. We're back after being gone for over 4.5 years. And I hope you get a chance to listen to episode 77, where we explain why we were gone for so long and that we're back for at least 3 more episodes. Angel and I are big supporters of entrepreneurship, and we love small businesses and faith-based businesses. And we just want to encourage you through our podcast each week. What's going to determine if we continue with more episodes will be the response. Subscribe to us on your platform. Send us an email at john@ondomedia.com. That would help us know you're listening and you want more episodes. So thank you so much, and let's get into today's episode. You're my cooking expert. Name me anything that's Italian that's spicy.
Pasta Alfredo Diablo, the lovely...
Why don't we have that then?
You've never asked me to make it.
Everybody, everything is always fettuccine Alfredo and lasagna.
Okay,
pizza.
You go to these restaurants, you have many choices, and you get the same thing.
I just know fettuccine Alfredo and lasagna.
But there are other things. Pasta al forno.
I've had that before. That's a lot of cheese.
But there's one where there's a lot of spice to it.
Well...
Anyway,
we're here today to talk about small business, and so today,
and pasta.
And pasta.
This is the small business podcast that is sweeter than all the rest. Marketing, media, and cupcakes.
This is episode 64 of Marketing, Media, and Cupcakes. Hello, I'm John Ondo. I'm a filmmaker and a media influencer, and along with me is my wife, Angel.
Hi there.
She has a cupcake business, a side hustle, as we like to say in this day and age.
Yep.
And she's also a customer service expert with a big company that does big things, but we never, ever say their name.
As we should not.
Because they're a big company that can do big things. But anyway, no, she does not work for the mafia. So anyway, that would be kind of interesting, though, to work for the mafia.
Kinda.
That'd be a family business.
Definitely.
Coming up on today's show in a few moments, we are going to have Rachel Alvarez on, and we are going to talk about we're going to talk about the B word.
Ooh. B-word.
Bankruptcy, especially if you have a small business that has unfortunately failed this year. You need to listen to this podcast because we, I think, have some hope, because she is going to explain how bankruptcy works and how you can get a fresh start, and it is not like you walk around with the big red A on your...
Exactly. It's not as bad as it is, and it is something that is doable, viable, and can help you reset.
You are not doomed. So that's very good. So you have a cupcake business on the side, and you've been making cakes pretty much nonstop this year. You've got some cupcake orders.
I do.
Any new cupcakes you're trying out that you're doing new flavors with?
I'm not doing any new flavors, but I am so thrilled. I got somebody, again, because I don't know what the search engine is these folks are using, but I am making a little order for someone for a birthday at a local university here that's close to us here in Columbus.
This is like the second one you've had where somebody's having a birthday. I'm like hundreds of miles away, and we want to send them cupcakes.
Yes. So this client is actually in California, but their daughter is going to college here.
Good old
Otterbein. And they wanted
to,
send her something special. Somehow they found me.
Well, because you show up in the local search engine. That's how we have it set up.
Which was amazing. And
great.
I had done one for somebody from New York, and because I was close by, and the first question they always said is, do you deliver? And I always say, well, depends on where it's at. Yeah. I have made crazy deliveries before, but, for something like that, when it's just around the corner and in my backyard, I can't wait.
I'm excited to see these cupcakes. We've been very busy with doing some TV shows and producing some videos, and got a text a minute ago that a video we just had our client release has 1,000 views, and that's a nice thing.
And this is the only time John and I actually get to talk. So.
A little bit. Well, that's unfortunately the case. But
okay.
So if you want to find out more information about what we do, it's ondomedia.com and Angel's Custom Cupcakes. And we're just small business owners, and that's why we have this podcast, is we're trying to help you out. More bad news this week, as if there hasn't been enough in the 2020 year. We found out that Disney is laying off 28,000 employees, both on the West Coast, East Coast, and I'm sure some other places, and that's certainly not good news. That affects the Orlando area. When I think Orlando, we have a very special friend in Orlando, Florida.
Yes, we do.
It's our friend Rachel Alvarez. She is an attorney, and you deal with bankruptcy. What's the how do you put that together? What do you call that, Rachel?
I'm a bankruptcy law attorney.
Gotcha. I was always brought up, and I don't know how you felt about this, but it's bankruptcy is like a dirty word. Bankruptcy means you failed and it's bad. So Rachel, when we talk about bankruptcy and filing for bankruptcy, this is kind of your wheelhouse. Tell us a little bit what that means, and when we have no other options, why do we want to consider going bankrupt?
Wow. So that's a loaded question, but
Right?
That's what I do.
Bankruptcy we're going to talk about personal bankruptcy because there's different forms of bankruptcy,
Sure.
but we're just going to do the consumer debt.
Excellent.
I'm going to go ahead and talk about Chapter 7. We can talk about Chapter 13 at a little point later, but at this point, we're talking about straight liquidation. So the whole thought of bankruptcy, I think people often think, oh, that's taboo. We don't want
Right.
to do that. If I file bankruptcy, there's just no recovering from that.
My credit will be destroyed.
Right. And then
Yeah.
I can never get credit again. I can't buy a house and I'm ruined for life. And actually, that's not true. That's not the case. The bankruptcy law is there for people who qualify for it. So prior to 2004, you could file for bankruptcy, and there was really a very low threshold of criteria to file it. But then in 2004, they're like, yeah, I think people are abusing this system. So they made sure that people had to qualify to benefit from the bankruptcy.
Okay.
So when you're doing a Chapter 7, you're liquidating debt. And that's typically, I'm going to get rid of all my debt. I don't have enough assets to worry about anything. And I'm just going to go ahead and surrender all of my debt and liquidate it, get rid of it, not have to pay anything back to the court. And that's it. I'm done.
Is it possible? How's it possible? Is it possible to keep your house, keep your car, and file bankruptcy?
So when you do your bankruptcy, you prepare a Schedule I and a Schedule J, and it's your income and your expenses. And you're disclosing to the court, this is what I make for a living. This is my income. This is any type of disability, Social Security, child support. All of that stuff gets put into that document. And you're presenting all the potential income that you have in your home. And then you tell them all of the debts that you have. So they look at these financial numbers and they're like, okay, well, you make $5,000, let's say, of income, and you're going to go ahead and keep $3,500 of debt. I think you can continue to make these payments. So I'm going to go ahead and reaffirm your debt, sign off an order that says you can continue to have these assets that you continue to want to pay. Now, typically, they're not jets or,
Right.
like jet skis or boats. For the most part, it's things that are necessities, such as your vehicle and such as your home. These are the type of things that they let you keep. Now, the purpose of the bankruptcy is to get rid of the financial burden that you have. And oftentimes people think, well, I'm going to file a Chapter 7, liquidate everything, but I'm going to keep everything. And that's not how that works.
Give me, I guess, a first step scenario, because I'm sure, unfortunately, I'm sure your business has been booming because people who had decent, steady, good, honest incomes, I assume that they lose those and then they do what everybody does. Well, the next job is around the corner, or the next stimulus check is around the corner. I'll be okay. And maybe they do the paycheck thing or whatever. They start running up their credit card debt. At what point in your experience do you have to say time out? We can't go any further. This is when we got to look at bankruptcy.
Well, for the most part, when people get to that point is when the creditors are calling them and saying, hey,
Yeah.
you haven't made your payment.
Is it 1 month after creditors are calling you, 2 months, or is it 1 month? You better do something.
So a majority of these credit cards, you got to understand, credit card companies are in it for the money and to make interest.
Yes.
Like that's how they get money. Let's just be honest. They've become wealthy for some reason, right?
Right.
So they have these credit cards, and if you've missed the deadline of your payment, let's say it's the 15th and you didn't make that payment, you'll get an email notification telling you, by the way, now you have a $25, $35, $45 fee that you have to pay on top of the debt you forgot to already pay. So after that time period, you start receiving little like letters in the mail. Hi, you're like 10 days late. But once you get to that 30-day mark, they start getting nasty.
Okay.
Like they can shut you down. They can start like your credit limit. They can go ahead and reduce it. They can close down your credit card. And they will call you every couple of hours if you let them.
Wow. So you're not overreacting if it's 30 days and you're getting these calls to be thinking about bankruptcy?
Well, I think it depends on the entire picture. If you're only behind on one credit card, because what I do see a lot of is like, okay, I have $200. I'll pay this credit card this month and I'll pay that credit card next month. And you're always behind because you never pay all of the credit cards all of the time.
Right.
So eventually they pull your credit every so often to make sure that you are able, your credit history is continuing to maintain the same. If your credit history somehow is affected, they have a right to reduce your credit limit so that they don't have the ramifications of having to chase you for a large amount of money. They just cut you off. And they're like, okay, you only have $200, even though your $5,000 limit is there. We're going to cut you off because you're having problems just paying the $200-$300 on there. There's no way you're going to be able to pay anything further. But don't get me wrong. There are some companies that will go ahead and let you go ahead and rack it up. You can pay minimum balance and they'll be okay with the minimum balance. The problem is from a credit perspective, anytime you max out a card over like a 35%, now you're looking at it being a detriment to your credit versus something that's actually helping and increasing your credit.
I know it could be just a personal thing, but is there a dollar amount, a threshold, a percentage, something that people can say this fits me, so to speak?
For the most part, I think when you're starting to struggle to actually make all payments on time and pay more than just the minimum payment, it's time to start looking at your budget. Is there something that I can eliminate to be able to actually pay my bills and pay down my debt? If that's not an option, if you're using your credit cards to sustain yourself and you're still overburdened and overwhelmed and they're starting to cut off the lines of credit, then I think we need to talk about bankruptcy. But generally speaking, for a bankruptcy itself to do a Chapter 7, I would necessarily, most of the clients, I pre-qualify them by saying, okay, how much debt do you have in credit cards? Let's go there. And typically the number is about $15,000 and up. I've seen, up to $300,000, $500,000. Like I've seen a lot of debt. But if you have a substantial amount of debt that is more than your annual income, let's talk bankruptcy. Let's do that.
So that's so to make it to level set, if I was making 50 and I have 55 in debt.
Credit card debt, though, not necessarily house or car.
Correct. I'm not mentioning the house or car, but just whatever it may be. It's probably a good time.
It's time to hit the button.
To look at it. Now, I have another question.
Please.
So, can you give me a definition of Chapter 7? Like are there different chapters as I know exist in business? Are there different personal, is there something other than Chapter 7 for a person, or is that it for a person?
So you do the Chapter 7, and as I said before, you have to qualify. If you're having a substantial amount of income in a household, and it really depends on the scale, how large of a household you have and how large of an income you have to qualify. If you make too much money over the threshold for the Chapter 7, then you would qualify for what is called a Chapter 13, which is a reorganization.
Yes.
So basically, the bankruptcy court puts you on a budget and tells you, this is what you're going to pay, and this is how you're going to pay it. And you're going to send one payment to the trustee, typically, and the trustee is going to pay for you because they're going to be able to maneuver this through the court. So let's say, for instance, you have a ton of credit cards. As you know, the more debt you have, the higher the interest rate becomes, the less likely it is that you pay. Well, through a Chapter 13 of reorganization, we can restructure that where you're paying principal only and hardly any interest on that so that you can get rid of the debt and liquidate it. And what you don't pay in that plan, it gets discharged, meaning you don't have to pay it after that. You just pay what you can throughout the plan. It's a very complicated formula, so I'm trying to make it very general, but essentially this is how that works. You make too much money to qualify for a 7. You have a substantial amount of debt you're behind. Even if it's like, for instance, COVID is going to be a great example of what a Chapter 13 can do for you. Why I say that is because a lot of people were either laid off, they were fired, and now when the economy is starting to reopen, they now have income. So they went, let's say, 4 to 6 months without income. They went behind on their mortgage payments or their car payments, and they're struggling to kind of get by. So now they have this flush of income coming in, and they can now afford what they once had been able to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to happen? That Chapter 13 is going to be a lifesaver because we can now restructure it, and we can tell your creditors, you're not going to get the full amount of interest that you want on this particular line of credit or debt. And you're going to get 0% interest. You're going to get the principal. And then after I'm done, that's it. You're not going to get any more from me. And I think that that's great. It also helps people get on track when it comes to their home because, of course, you don't just say, oh, I'm not going to pay my house after this Chapter 13. You can continue making payments on your mortgage like you did before COVID. So we're going to start seeing that that's going to be a vehicle that a lot of people are going to be able to use to salvage their homes. You can get rid of the rest of the debt. You can do a lot of things. But if you do a Chapter 13, you can save your house. You can save your car.
Now let's throw another egg into the juggling ring here. What happens if you have credit card debt and you've got a mortgage and you've got a car payment and you also have back taxes? You've got the IRS is on your back. And this is going to segue into small business stuff in a second, but is that change the scenario? Because it sounds like bankruptcy allows you to legally say to the creditors, we're changing this and you can't call us anymore, but I don't think that works for the IRS, does it?
So the IRS is a unique entity in itself.
Yes.
I'm going to say entity because I don't want them to come and harass me.
Of course.
So
we love the IRS. God bless the IRS.
Yes, I make my payments.
Okay.
Don't you worry about it.
All right. What were you going to say?
So the IRS, what they do is after a certain period of time, some of these tax issues can be discharged in a bankruptcy.
Okay.
It's a completely separate, process. It's called an adversary proceeding. And if you do a Chapter 7, you would then file, it's like a lawsuit telling the IRS, hey, I qualify to get this debt rid of. And they would have to qualify to do that. And there's a lot of qualifications to get that done. But can you discharge taxes in a bankruptcy? Some of them you can.
Wow. Okay.
The other issue that you run into is if you don't qualify because of that criteria that you have to have, you can always file a Chapter 13 and put the IRS taxes into your bankruptcy and have them be part of the creditors that get paid out.
Okay.
They get treated like a priority claim, so they get to get paid before other debts. However, it's a way to get the IRS off your back.
Good. Okay. So the last thing I want to get into today, and then I want to have you tell us how people can get in contact with you or an attorney who knows this stuff in their state. So obviously we deal with small businesses here on Marketing, Media, and Cupcakes, and there's a lot of small businesses that had to just shut down and they're dead, restaurants and so forth. A lot of them have survived, but what's the scenario for a small business where you have an LLC or whatever it is, and your personal income, there's kind of a muddy line between your personal income and your business income and the things upended. That's, I'm assuming, a different scenario because you've got business creditors after you and maybe personal creditors, right? What happens for those folks? What options do they have?
So there's a lot of small businesses do the following. They use their personal lines of credit. They use their personal credit cards. They go ahead and do all things in their personal name, or they personally guarantee these debts for their businesses. So this is how I'd like to look at it. If your business doesn't have a lot of assets and it has no income, if somebody sued your business, what is it really that they're going to get from the business?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's just nothing there,
Gotcha.
right? So go ahead, sue me. And then from a personal perspective, if all of these lines of credit card debt is in my personal name, I would just file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, liquidate the debt, and walk away, and we're done.
Okay.
That's just basically how I would see it. That's the cleanest version of that scenario.
Okay.
So what? Oh, and I was just gonna ask, so what happens then? Let's say we do that now in 2020. You kind of lick our wounds and go away, and then in 2022, it's like, you know what, market's good. I want to reopen my widget business. Am I going to get banks looking at me saying, "Yeah, no way, you filed for bankruptcy," or is that the fact that you got your debt cleaned up show that you're responsible and they like that?
So typically there's a couple of ways. Like a business entity in itself is like a human being. We give birth to it by creating it, right? And it has an EIN number. So as long as you're not using that same entity, that same EIN number, then you can start fresh, a new business. Maybe
Wow.
it's something a little bit different. It could be something exactly the same, but it's not the same business.
Because the numbers are attached to the whatever, the legal
Now, the
documents.
thing is that what you can't do is just go ahead and close out one business and trade it up and then just kind of start a new business right away, immediately using the same assets and the same customers and the same contracts, because then they just pierce the corporate veil and say it's the same thing. It's the same entity.
Yeah.
You try to defraud us.
Right.
So that's one way of looking at it. When it comes to credit, when you have a small business, typically you have to take time to establish that business and that EIN and have some type of history before they give a line of credit to that particular business. From a personal perspective, if I filed bankruptcy, it would take me anywhere from 2 to 3 years to reestablish credit to be able to get a FHA loan to buy a home. So is it going to take some time to reestablish your credit? Absolutely. But you have to work at it too. You can't just expect I filed bankruptcy so my credit score is going to get up. You basically go from zero credit and now you have to give yourself a credit history.
I see.
So if you filed bankruptcy because your business went under, then I would recommend getting a secured credit card from your local bank and then go ahead and start establishing credit history from that point forward.
So that's great to know, because I've always looked at it as you filed for bankruptcy, they got a little black check mark on your name that you filed for bankruptcy. And what I'm learning here now, and this is all great, is that basically, no, they just deleted all your credit and you just got to build it from scratch. So it's like they erased everything, right?
Exactly. And that's why when you look at your credit report after bankruptcy, it says included in bankruptcy. It's like this whole thing got wiped out. We're done.
So where did the and maybe this was prior to 2004, that it used to be if you filed bankruptcy, there was this magic number 7. It took 7 years. Like I had always heard that it was once you file, don't even bother doing anything for 7 years. And then after the magic 7, suddenly you could do things again. So is that something you've heard of?
Is that old school or something?
Or is that, what is that?
So the 7-year mark, you hear 7 and 10. So what happens is that it stays on your credit report for anywhere from 7 to 10 years.
Okay.
So it does report, it is reflected on your credit report. But what people don't do, and not a lot of lawyers do it, I do it because I love helping people. And I do a class called Life After Bankruptcy. That means you file bankruptcy. I'm going to teach you how to budget yourself, and I'm going to teach you how to reestablish your credit so that when you're done with this bankruptcy, you can have good credit. And I want you to be able to buy a home or be able to get a loan or be able to start a business in the future. So I teach that class for my clients. And what you do in there is a lot of attorneys won't do that, won't go that extra step. They'll send you and refer you out. And that's typically because, they're super busy. But I'll go ahead and take a handful of my clients and just say, if you're interested, I'll do the class and have them all come in. And I teach them how to reestablish your credit so that you can move on from bankruptcy. You can reestablish yourself. I have had many clients file bankruptcy and they come back and they take my class, the Life After Bankruptcy. And then they tell me, I have the best credit score I've ever had in my entire life.
Nice.
Because of bankruptcy is the best decision I made.
So then I have a question in the sense of, what is the difference between what you offer from a bankruptcy perspective versus all the fun things I hear on TV about the consolidate your debt? So I knew someone who used to work for, I don't even know if it exists, but something that was kind of like a consumer credit counseling type of service where you came in and you basically did what you just said. What's your income? What's your outgo?
Make the little worksheet.
And get rid of what you can't. And then they, on behalf of them, would go negotiate with the, creditors what they were going to pay and all that happy jazz without them filing bankruptcy. Unless they looked at the numbers and went, yeah, we cannot help you. And then would slide the paper back and say, you need to call an attorney. So where does that fall in this whole bankruptcy model? Where have you ever referred to somebody to that, or are they too just potentially scamming those who already don't have any money to get more money?
That's a loaded question, but I'll
Another
get to it.
Okay.
So essentially, this is what happens. Just because I'm a bankruptcy attorney doesn't mean I will just automatically tell everybody, you have to file, you have to file. If I see that there's debt in there that we can negotiate or something in there that will benefit you in lieu of a bankruptcy, because you really don't want to abuse the bankruptcy. I don't want somebody to come in and file bankruptcy when I can foreshadow or foresee that in the future, they're going to need it more importantly at that point in time.
Gotcha.
You
see him going down a path.
Right. But you probably want to hold off on that. So for instance, I'll have a client that will come in and I need to file bankruptcy. Okay, well, how much debt do you have? Oh, $2,000. Oh no, you don't need to file bankruptcy. You're going to spend $2,000 in, fees and, classes and all this stuff. Like why bother with that? What you can do is negotiate that. And there's different ways to negotiate that debt. However, these credit consolidation, the distinction between them and using a bankruptcy attorney is that when you do file a Chapter 13, which is that reorganization of your debt,
sure,
you have the power and the jurisdiction of the court. So your creditors can't be slick and they can't deny you the right of having this bankruptcy filed. Okay. I mean, they can object to your plan and you can negotiate with them, but it has to be with the parameters and the permission of the court. And if the court says it's allowed, it's allowed. If the court says, no, that's not to the benefit of the debtor, we're not going to allow that, they have to abide by that. Where if you have an organization that is doing it on their own, they can go tell the organization to go fly a kite. Like, we're not doing that. We want 30% interest, not, the 10 that you want to give us. And the other thing that happens is that you still have all this negative reporting going on, even though you're in a repayment plan. So with the bankruptcy, it stops the negative reporting because it tells everybody I'm in bankruptcy and it is under the jurisdiction of the bankruptcy court. And we're not going to allow them to continue to give you negative credit.
So the credit card companies do have to be smart about this, because what they don't want to hear is an attorney or a judge or somebody calling them saying, you're not going to get all your money back. This has been ruled or whatever. So they kind of have to be smart about giving money to people, knowing that there's a chance that's the worst case scenario, I'm assuming, for them, is to find out they're not going to get their money back, or at least not all of it. So I could see that be an issue.
You would think, right? You would think that. But you know what's the funny part? After you file bankruptcy, you get bombarded with all of these credit card applications.
Because they think
will pre-approve you. Yeah.
They think that you'll go right back into it, like you're on crack or something.
Yeah. And then they know you can't file bankruptcy for another 8 years.
Oh.
So some way, shape, or form, they're going to get their money. They'll garnish your wages.
Wow.
They'll come after your bank account. So that's why I do that Life After Bankruptcy class, because I want people to be aware and don't fall for these pitfalls. Because then you end up, if you have a bad spending habit, we need to identify it immediately and address it. Now, I can't save the world, but I try to help them as much as I can. I review their bank statements when they come to do their bankruptcy, and I look at them and I can give them some pointers. Like, look, if you lay off the Starbucks every day for everybody in the household, you will save yourself $1,000 a month. And with that, you can do so many things. You can go on vacation.
Yeah.
So, Rachel, a couple things. This is so encouraging, because I think for people right now going through this, and a lot of people with higher incomes are dealing with this. The debt they thought they could pay off is now unobtainable. There is hope, and this is what's great about what you're telling us. Where do they start? Obviously, you're in Orlando, Florida, in Winter Park, but if you live in Nebraska or here in Ohio or somewhere, where do they look in the phone book?
I was just say, don't you dare say the Yellow Pages.
Where do they look at? Where do they Google? What kind of attorney are they looking for? And if they wanted to contact you and ask you some questions, and I don't know if can you help people out of state, or are you not allowed?
Well, the bankruptcy code is something that is a federal law. So I could take my license in Florida and practice somewhere else. However, every state has different exemptions and jurisdictions.
Sure.
Like they have different things that they do. Like in Florida, we have the homesteading protection. In some states, you don't have that.
Gotcha.
And then in other states, you have up to $100,000 of assets that you can keep. And that includes your equity of your home. Like, they have so many different things.
So what's the key search engine thing they should type in and to find a local bankruptcy attorney, or what's the phrase? So
for the search of bankruptcy on Google, I would do consumer bankruptcy attorney, I would do bankruptcy attorney in your city or in your zip code because they're going to be closer to the courthouse where you are located, because you don't want to get somebody in the state but far away.
Right.
And then there's also different districts. Like there's 3 districts in Florida. We have the northern, the middle, and we have the southern district. I'm licensed in the 2 because I refuse to do bankruptcies in Miami.
Okay. So if people want to get a hold of you, find out more and get some more information, maybe just whatever. What's the best way to get a hold of you? Because you are a kind person that you love helping people, and that's one of the reasons I've always liked working with you as a client. How do they get a hold of you?
You can email me your inquiries, and I can try to give you some guidance. You can email me at rma@rachelalvarez.com.
Cool. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. Yes. And Rachel's going to come back on in a couple weeks. We're going to talk about, this thing where you work at a business and you have free speech and you post something and then you get fired. And she's going to give us some enlightenment on what you can and can't and shouldn't do. And because I think that's another problem, because, social media is really just a cesspool dumpster fire right now. And I don't want you to get hurt there at home. So, Rachel, thank you so much for joining us this episode.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure.
Really appreciate Rachel coming on, and I hope if this has been a bad year for you, and it's been a bad year for a lot of folks, that this gives you some hope. That's what we're here for. We always say keep living the dream. We believe everybody has a purpose in life. If you got kicked in the head this year, don't give up. Keep going. We go back to our one episode with Rob Yannock, where he talks about the Buster Douglas, get back up after when you get knocked down, get back up. So get back up. 2021 should be better. Let's all pray that it is.
Yes.
We'd love it if you'd subscribe. Please tell your friends and other small business owners that we are the coolest podcast ever, because we are. And thank you so much for listening, and keep living the dream.
Connect with John and Angel via Facebook and Instagram and let us know your thoughts. Marketing, Media, and Cupcakes is a production of Ondo Media.